When you think of Tesla, what businesses do you think they're in? Many know they're the leaders in the revolution towards an electric vehicle future, but actually, Tesla has 11 major business segments that are poised to generate significant and meaningful revenue and profits. The top five in order of future profits is Tesla Bot, also called Optimus, Robotaxi with self driving cars, Tesla Semi, energy storage, and automobiles, which includes the Cybertruck. These five will generate massive sales and profits between now and 2030. Today, I'll be interviewing Randy Kirk, who will make the case for a Tesla share price of $10,000 by 2030, based on what he says are conservative assumptions. These are some of the biggest markets that matter to the economy. First up is the Tesla Bot, which they call Optimus. The market potential for humanoid robots is still relatively new, but if Tesla is successful in creating a useful and efficient robot, there is potential for it to be used in a wide range of industries, practically for everything and for everywhere. Second is Robotaxi. The market potential for autonomous ride-sharing services is significant. Tesla's advantage in this market is its existing electric vehicle technology and the brand recognition that comes with it. Third is, of course, the auto market. The electric vehicle market is projected to grow significantly in the coming years, with a projected value of $800 billion by 2027. Tesla has already established itself as a leader in this market, and there's potential for it to continue to grow its market share as more consumers adopt electric vehicles. Fourth is energy storage. In the US alone, there are over 1,000 gas and coal peaker plants that are dirty, expensive to operate and maintain, and ripe for disruption. Every year, renewable energy installed capacity will increase everywhere for decades to come. Wrap your head around that. Tesla needs many, many more megapack factories, and the world needs many, many more batteries. And finally, there's also semi-trucks and large trucks. There is potential for Tesla to disrupt the traditional diesel-powered truck market with its more efficient and environmentally friendly technology. Randy Kirk is here with us again. I've had him on the channel a few times now, talking about Tesla Catalyst, Tesla Semi, Tesla Energy, and Tesla's 21 modes. You should watch those videos after this one when you finish this one. Welcome, Randy. Thank you so much for joining me again.
Hey, it's always great to join you and talk about all these great Tesla subjects.
Thank you, Randy. So Randy is an experienced entrepreneur running a successful product manufacturing business as well as 20 other businesses. He's written now 10 books and recently having written 2 books on Tesla, the Elon Musk mission and the Elon Musk method. All right, Randy, thank you again. So I get really, really excited when we get to talk about Tesla, the business, and Tesla, the stock. So help me and my audience get brighter about all of this.
I'll do my best.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Randy. So first question I've got to ask you is I did hear you recently tell us all that you are forecasting the Tesla stock to be, what is it now, $10,000 by 2030. Come on. Tell me how you came up with that number and how did you come to this conclusion?
Oh well, if we want to get down into the nitty gritty, I don't think this is going to be the place to do it. But you have to, of course, take each division by itself. But my main claim is that it's going to happen because of these 5 pillars, I call them. It's not going to be the other 6 that we'll talk about, I guess, toward the end of this conversation. Things like insurance, they're important, and they would be big companies by themselves, but they're going to be rounding errors when it comes to the other 5. And so I'm looking at the 5 pillars, break down the 5 pillars, and then determine what is each of those going to be worth. Kathy Wood of ARK Invest, who is one of the most famous market analysts in the world right now, she feels like the stock will be 7,000 within 5 years. So she's ahead of, she's already got it at 7,000 long before the end of at the end of the decade. But that's based almost entirely on Robotaxi and auto. She's not really plugging in anything for energy, our semi truck, or for the robots. So I guess I'm just when you add those 3 in, I would have to be at double that 7,000 that she's got it slated for.
Okay, well, you're very, very optimistic, and you're kind of what one of the things we'll need to talk about is whether or not your timelines are going to be accurate or not. So, as we go through each of these segments, these business units, let's talk about that, right? How likely are they able to manufacture these things and produce them? How likely is the demand going to be there? What's going to make them different than their competition, their price points, and then the timeline? I think that's the key thing, right? Is whether or not you're being too optimistic or you're not. And let's start with the big one, which is Tesla Bot. So let's start with this segment because we all know that Tesla came out with their demo of Optimus, and many of the robot experts have been saying that this is not easy. This is not something that can be easily produced. There's two things to think about, right? There's the hardware, the body, but then there's also the brains. And so tell me why you think, and I know you've already said a few things that in your previous videos and your previous times you and I have got together, you've been saying that you think that there's going to be 1,000 bots by the end of this year. So let's start with that. Is that wild statements?
Yeah. So, since you and I last talked, I have had multiple conversations with people like Joe Justice and with Scott Walter, who's a robotics expert. He has been putting robots in factories for the last 30 plus years. John Gibbs, who was one of the authors in the Elon Musk mission, who is a specialist in AI, and others, and one after another, these individuals are saying, "Randy, your number's right. They were not believers." And as we discussed it and looked at it more closely, what everybody tended to agree on is that you need the data. The data is only going to come from multiple bots doing tasks. It's just like the cars. You need millions of cars out there taking millions of left turns and right turns and various kinds of stops and pedestrians all around and all the rest of the kinds of things, all the edge cases. Well, you need that same data coming into the bots in order to make them useful at a plethora of tasks. And so that's why I believed early on that they would need to build 1,000, even if they were hand built using 3D printing, whatever it took, get those 1,000 bots built, get them to start doing tasks, get those tasks to allow them to set up the simulations. Then, when the simulations can help the bots to get even smarter, and then everything that they learn, everything that one robot learns, it all gets uploaded. And so all 1,000 robots will have that same knowledge. The other side of that question was, well, will they be able to get the hardware to a
Mhm.
level that makes sense? And again, these robotics experts, one after another, came on. And I'm no expert, but I am a manufacturer. I'm a plastics manufacturer, or was. I've sold that company 15 years ago. But I know a lot about plastics manufacturing, and I know a little bit about making things like motors and metal parts and whatnot. And I looked at that robot, and to me, as a kind of a almost expert, I'm like, that's not that hard to build. And then the experts came in and go, "You're right, Randy. There are motors and there's gears and there's plastic parts and there's metal things that hold it together. And no, none of those parts are hard to build. And the hard part, there was only two hard parts. Do you know which two hard parts there were?
The brain,
The balance,
the
the
balance. Okay, yeah,
balance, and the hands. These
yes.
were the two hard parts. So yeah, the feet and the hips and how big you make the butt and all those kind of things and how much do the batteries weigh, but the torso is not too big a problem. When you're walking around and you've got different weights that you're carrying, or you maybe something's happening that creates a torque, like turning on a drill motor, that makes the torque happen to your arm. So there are issues with regard to balance that have to be dealt with. And then there's hands are only have so many degrees of motion and so much manipulation capability, because the more sophisticated you make them, the more expensive they are, and sometimes the less useful they are. So they've come up with a hand right now, which all these experts say is a fine hand, plenty good. And then the brain will figure out how to use that hand to accomplish the task in the way that that hand should do. So those are really the only two hard issues, is balance and the hand.
Gotcha. Yeah, it makes sense. So first of all, first comment is like you said, Tesla is built for manufacturing. They are multiple factories. Elon Musk has stated several times, right, that the factory is the product, and they are really focused on creating products and factories. And so for them to be able to create a bot, manufacture it in scale, they're the most likely to be able to do this. And the question is, can they create a workable bot? And my understanding was that what you said about the gait and the balance, that it's one thing for the bot to walk on its own, but it's another thing when it's meant to be carrying things, and then it change, the weight changes, the balance changes, how they're holding it changes, and then they're still able to walk. But as you just said, it's about the brain, right? Because if you can get all these visuals, the vision, the camera, the visual ability to label things, and then be able to get that information, and then it can learn how to even walk on its own just by using vision as well. And then kind of like the pressure points of everything in the body, right? So that's why you've been saying that in order to that to happen, you need to have at least 1,000 bots, right?
Yeah. So the idea was that you put those thousand bots. So this was Scott
Yeah.
Walter's visualization. He says, well, you get this big room, really big room, and you've got different kinds of things on the floor, and you've got tables and stuff sitting around. You've got different tasks that may be set up at these different tables, and then you got these bots, a
Yeah.
thousand bots walking around the room, and they're carrying different things, and they're dealing with different tools, and they just do this all day long. And
Yeah.
obviously, I think you'd also have to have some technicians in there with them that would be saying, "Hey, go left, go right," or "Hey, pick that up a little differently, raise it up a little higher, turn it on a little slower," whatever it is. But one way or the other, you need these bots, just like you've got the cars now. You need a bunch of them to go do a bunch of things, and for that bunch of things to be training them, then that information goes into Dojo. Dojo spits Dojo with the with some really good employees, software folks at Tesla, like you say, start to label those. They then are set up the labeling or find out whether the automated labeling is working. It's all too complicated for my poor brain. But eventually they'll have simulations, and now the simulations can take over a ton of the work. And yeah, I think, quite frankly, I think it will happen really fast if you have enough of these.
Yeah, I interviewed Scott Walter in one of my interviews, and what he had said and shown through video proof, he had shown that he believes that Tesla already has at least what, three at the minimum, if
Or
not
five or
10,
something.
and that they're actually already working in the factory. So do you've been interviewing a bunch of experts as well? So you think that Tesla's much further ahead than many of us are?
Yeah, so probably one of the guys in our community who has the most respect is Joe Justice. And so
Yeah.
I interviewed Joe Justice, and he says, look, just think about how everything is done at Tesla. It's all done around a pole, and you've got 20 or 30 or 40 or 50 people in a group. They've all got their computers out and their iPads, and they're sitting around and they're discussing, but more than discussing, they're working and they're trying things, and then they show the other person what they've realized, and these pods of people are developing the bot right now, or this was weeks ago. And yes, they're building another one tomorrow and another one the next day. They're iterating, they're trying different things. And yeah, he thought that the 1,000 number was easily by the end of the year.
Easily by the end of the year. And then the other difference I've heard about Tesla and the business unit for robots is that for Tesla, when they spend all this time and money, resources to create the bot, but they themselves are going to use the bot, and the savings is going to create a business model for this even before they sell this to any required customer that's line up and actually buy this. They themselves is a massive company, including SpaceX, to be able to start buying this from them, right? So what's your thoughts on the business model?
So that was an incredible, that early on we all thought that it was like, duh, they're going to use it for themselves, and that's going to reduce their labor, and or in this time of short labor, it's going to make it easier for them to find the people they need as they dramatically increased their labor force around the world. But then somebody said in one of my comments, and I was like blown
Mhm.
away by this. I love the comments on YouTube videos. And this guy said, hey, they can send these down to their first, second, third tier suppliers. And these can not
Mhm.
only be helping to save the suppliers in terms of their labor, helping them get
Yeah.
the labor they need in a labor short market, but reducing the cost to Tesla. But it's also the proving ground for the product as something to sell to third parties. So I would suspect that by the end of this year, there will already be dozens and dozens of Tesla robots that will be doing useful tasks in first, second, third, maybe even sixth tier suppliers for Tesla.
Okay. So we're talking about the five business segments about Tesla that you have put in priority that you think is going to be the biggest, and you ranked robots as number one. I'm curious why energy storage is actually number four. If you want, we can reserve that question till then. But tell me about the bot business segment in terms of how big it is and why it's number one. And what do we, I've heard Elon obviously think that it's going to just be like it'll just change, it'll take over the entire economy, right?
Yeah, so I say a lot. I'll say I don't know if I've ever said this on your channel, but I don't I do extrapolate and interpolate. Okay, you need to, you have to, right? But at the core of everything that I've ever said, I believe, I tried to do this anyway, is I've gotten the core of what I've said from something that somebody in the Tesla world who is an expert or who is in leadership said. Well, when it comes to the Tesla bot, Elon Musk
Mhm.
specifically has said two
Mhm.
things. Number one, it is the largest of the companies that he started. He says it will be the largest. And number two, that the TAM is at least 8 billion. So 8 billion units. So
Sorry,
which
8 billion
billion
robots, because he's
yes,
basically saying there's going to be at least one robot for every human that's alive today.
at least,
Yeah.
yes. And that it will completely change the economy. So you have to think about, I've been again in manufacturing, import, distribution, sales, marketing for my entire career. I've had lots of products come to me. People bring me products all the time. Oh, this product, we got to market with that product. And you look at it and you analyze it, you see how it's going to be built, you see what the cost of goods is, you take a look at what's existing on the market. And at the end of the day, you say to the poor inventor that came in, you go, it, it it's too expensive. You can't make this product. Hey, people would use it, but they're willing to pay $10 for it, and the cost of goods on it's going to make a retail of $100. So no, sorry, can't do this. Well, all of a sudden, if you take all the labor out of it,
Mhm.
it might be $10. So there could
Mhm.
be millions of cases of products and services that can be done when the labor is taken out of it that can't be done now. So who knows? Elon says it, and Joe Justice both said it blows up the economy. It completely changes everything that we know about the economy as it exists today. So does it eliminate lots of jobs? Yeah, but it probably creates a bunch more.
Okay. Well, let's get to numbers. Do you have some economics here for the
Yeah.
Tesla bot and the time
So
frame?
yeah. So again, without getting into like you know piece by piece by piece, I just say by 20. First of all, uh, my most my second most quoted remark is that there'll be a million sold in 2024. So I believe these
Okay.
will all be sold to companies who have to apply. When I say sold, it could be leased, sold or leased. I think there's a better use case for lease. I think it'll be at least $20,000 a year to lease one. I think they're going to cost Tesla about $5,000 to produce. There will be some customer service and technician costs involved in ongoing relationship with the customer, but basically they can lease them for $20,000 a year and they'll last 2 to 5 years. So it's going to be a very, very, very profitable division. But the first year they will lease 1 million of these units and to mostly manufacturers and people that have larger businesses. So that's the first year. Now, if you're leasing them as you go out into the future years, each year you still have the remaining bots that you're still leasing that will be still gaining you that $20,000 a year. So my claim is that At the end of 2030, they will have 100 million bots at $20,000 a piece per year of income. And if you want to make it easy, you could say after all expenses. So we'll just say it's 20,000 per year after expenses. And so 100 million, you say, wow, that's a lot of bots. But there's 3.5 billion laborers in the world. So 100 billion is like this much of the market. And if you had a bunch of competitors that came in too, and a couple of them made 50 billion and a couple more made 25 billion, you'd still be talking about this much of the addressable market, according to Elon. Again, I didn't come up with these numbers. I'm using Elon's number. But I believe it. In other words, once he says it, I have to take it through my own brain cells and come out the other end and go, does that make any sense at all? As a manufacturer, if I was offered to buy bots right now or rent bots at $20,000 a year, in my old company, I had 100 employees. I would have rented at least 10 immediately. Yeah. So that's my number. 100 million times 20,000.
Gotcha. And now you did say, though, you think that there'll be 1 million bots produced by Tesla, sold or leased by next year, 2024. That seems very, very aggressive, Randy. I mean, the Cybertruck took 3 to 4 years, 5 years to conceive and to design. The factory needs to be built, lined up. They have to probably produce 5,000 the first year, this year, and then maybe 10, maybe a couple 100,000 by next year. You're thinking that magically they can produce 1 million by next year, so your time frame may be a little aggressive, don't you think?
All right. So as a manufacturer, and I'm sure that this makes sense to everybody in the audience, it's one thing to ramp up a car.
Mm-hmm.
I know I'm always pulling out my water bottle, but this is what I made 5 million of a year for about 20 years. So these are bicycle style water bottles. So you're making 5 million of these a year in my little plant, my little 25,000 square foot plant.
Yeah.
And if I wanted to make if I had another bottle that was just dissimilar, it wasn't quite the same, and I wanted to make 5 million of those the next year, it would have been no big deal. You make a mold, you buy the equipment, you put them up, and you make 5 million of those the next year. It's not hard. Okay. So between that product and a car, in terms of a ramp, there's a huge difference. Well,
Mm-hmm.
again, I'm not a robotics expert. So I went to my experts, and I've had 5 experts on my show. And then I've watched jillions of YouTube experts as well. And everybody says there's no big deal right now. The parts are all, they've got their parts list. They can already make all those parts internally. They don't even have to go out to third-party vendors. It's all really easy stuff to build. All of those pieces can be ramped up easily. You can ramp, the hardest ones would be the motors, and the motors to make 1 million motors in a year. It's not a big deal. So everything, all the parts can be ramped up. And then according to Scott, he says you could build this thing in your garage on 2 tables. You can get it in a box.
He should know. Yeah. He's owned 2. He's co-founded 2 robotics companies. Okay, now that part I buy. I do buy that the hardware to create the bots, and they've got like 42 actuators, and they're all the same. Even the fingers are. Scott pointed out that they're all 5 are exactly the same shape and size, so they're all usable. Okay, that part I get. So pretty aggressive, Randy. But I think we do agree that the brain is what matters to make them useful, to make them be able to move the hardware. And so that gets us to Robotaxi. We know that the bot is going to take advantage of the progress that Tesla's made in their supercomputer, the neural networks, the ability to do vision recognition and vision AI. He calls it real world AI. And then you take all that, and then you just kind of he's already said that these cars are basically robots on wheels.
Right.
And so let's talk about the business unit of Robotaxi, full self-driving, where it is today. There's been promises by Elon every year since 2018. It's going to come. It's here. It's going to be 1 million Robotaxis by next year. None of that has come to fruition. But the latest release, version 11.3, just came out 2 weeks ago. Everybody's saying this is a step change. So there might be, or maybe not, kind of like a movement towards this. So tell me about the Robotaxi business.
Yeah, so I would be the last person to ask to guess when this will finally be a thing. Okay, I've had it. We bought our Model Y 2.5 years ago. We've got full self driving. We never use it. My wife's car. She'll turn it on for 3 miles. She only drives 6 miles to work. She'll turn it on, and halfway there, she'll turn it off again because it does something weird, and she just doesn't want to be bothered. So the folks that are using it are people that have used it and gotten used to it. But you put it in somebody's new right now, I don't care 11.3.4.6 whatever, the current version, you give it to somebody and you tell them to just go out and start playing with it, and they're going to go, oh my goodness, it's going to do something weird within a few miles. So it isn't ready, for Robotaxi by any stretch of the imagination. Having said that, I don't think there's a single person out there, except for some grouchy Tesla Q, or Teslac, however you pronounce that, some negative Nelly. I don't think there's anybody out there that doesn't think it's going to happen. It's just a matter of which day. So 2024, 2025, I don't really care when. At this point, I'd love to have it start working tomorrow so we could use our investment. Although we only paid 8,000 for it, so I kind of feel good about that. so, so, but as far as the robotaxi part of it, when it happens, it happens. But it's going to happen. And I think even Kathy Wood, who's probably the biggest bull on Robotaxi, I think she says 2025. So once you actually have it working, let's say, just for fun, let's say Christmas this year, we get to unwrap our Christmas present, and the Christmas present is you can drive this thing from your back seat while reading a newspaper and playing a video game. All right, and it's just going to take you to your destination, right into a shopping mall, through a roundabout, and it's going to get you there, drop you off, and then it's going to go home, pick up the kids, and take them to the game. All right, let's say that all happens on Christmas Day this year. I'd say you're still going to be looking at 18 months roughly of how you build out the Robotaxi network. If I were doing this, and I'm not, but I think that it's the only way this can happen, you will take a city like Phoenix, or some city that's kind of far away from other cities, where you can test, and in a state or a city where the politicians are with you. And that would be mostly Arizona, Nevada, or Florida. So I'm saying one of those three, or it could be a country. It could be in the Netherlands or in China, where Tesla is just, everybody's just thrilled to death to do whatever Tesla wants to do. So anyway, someplace it's going to be tested, and people will be able to join the network. Hopefully, the software, the app is all ready to go. I mean, they've had so much time to do that, but it's not uncomplicated to get these taxis to know where to go, when to go, how long it's going to take them to get there, and then once they leave somebody off, to get the next job lined up. And I mean, if you've watched your Uber driver do this, that's not that easy. So I'm saying it's going to take an 18-month ramp before it's released, like across the United States, across Europe, across China. But once it does, I'm okay with. There's various people with different numbers out there, but yeah, do I think that there will be at least 10 million, robotaxis out there 18 months after this thing is released? Yeah, I think there'll be 10 million. Now the key is, what does that? There's a branch. There's going to be a branch someday. Let's call it 2026. Tesla's going to say, are we going to make half of our units as robotaxis in our own fleet? And then half of our units are going to consumers who still want to use it as a car for their own purposes, but might rent it out to the fleet. Or are we never going to sell another car and it's all going to go into the fleet? So there's all these forks in the road. I tend to go along with, I tend to believe it's going to be this. It may not be 50-50, it might be 60-40 or 40-60, but there is a number of people, salespeople, people that use their vehicle for their work, like they have tools and things that they need to carry around, government agencies, police departments and fire departments and all these kind of, there's a whole bunch of people that need their unique individual car that won't be able to use a robo taxi as such. So I think it's going to be some kind of split. Who knows? It might be 70-30. I have no idea, but there'll be a split. And so, but that I still think that Tesla will have their own fleet. So once again, almost like your Optimus example, I'm saying that by the end of the decade, they will have, I forget my number now. I'm sorry, I don't have it on the tip of my tongue, but let's say they'll have 50 million cars out there that are on their own fleet. That doesn't count the nickel a mile they're making from your and my car. That's just their own fleet out there that's making them, say, 20 cents a mile. And let's say it costs them 5 cents a mile to be out there, and they're charging 25, so they're netting 20 cents a mile to do all the stuff. You take the 20 cents a mile times, let's say, 60,000 miles a year, times 50 million cars. Anyway, do the math any way you want. My number is no better than anybody else's when it comes to speculating what's going to happen in 2030. But there's a number like that. Say it's 30 million cars instead. Say they're making 15 cents a mile. Pick your own numbers, do your multiplication, and it's going to be worth a huge amount of money.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I'm actually the opposite in terms of the way I think of things, because initially, most people are very conservative with the software FSD because they've not seen it improve over time. But I understand, and I keep watching on exponential curves. And then I've also been in the software industry. But then, because of OpenAI and Chat GPT and GPT-4 comes out, now everybody's starting to understand exponential learning. And all of a sudden, this thing that can't even do spell check properly is now all of a sudden amazingly brilliant and smarter than a human today and can pass the Turing test. And I think because of that, people are going to start realizing that FSD could actually improve very quickly. And all of a sudden, like you said, it's almost not a debate anymore. It's almost like just asking when. And then the hard part about me was I was still stuck on, well, hardware is going to take a lot longer, which is the opposite, right? It's actually, no, hardware should be very simple and easy, like you said, for the bot.
Yeah. So there's your second pillar. So that one to me is like, I would say for most people, I think if you to me anyway, let's not say most people. Let's just say for Randy Kirk, when I analyze these 5 pillars, the Robotaxi is the least. If you want to put a speculation number on it,
Mm-hmm.
I would say, oh, Robotaxi is only a 50-50 chance or a 60-40 chance that it's going to happen ever. Okay. But it's still maybe it's 70-30. I don't know. I don't know what number I put on it. All the other 4, they're either making
Mm-hmm.
them already or it's like the robot where I'm 100% sure. So,
Yeah.
so that's the only one I have any speculation on. And eventually, if Elon one day woke up and said, you know what, this robotaxi thing isn't going to work, I think he would finally do what Kathy Wood has been telling him to do for 2 years. He would just turn it into a driving, another Uber, where there would be a driver, but it
Yeah.
would be all Teslas, and the cost
Mm-hmm.
structure would drop to something that Uber couldn't compete with. And anyway, so that's another opportunity. But I'd much rather see much rather see the thing we've all been waiting for.
Okay. Yeah. So Robotaxi is the one that you're most concerned about or don't really know when it's going to come,
It's
but
20%
it's
chance of whatever. Yeah.
yeah, it's going to be massive. Okay. Well, let's get going. We got 3 more pillars here. You got auto and Cybertrucks. We already know that Tesla is a massive leader here. They're just killing it. They're winning markets. They're growing faster than people realize. What's your estimation for the size of this business? And I think this one's straightforward, right? We all know that they're leading and they're winning the space, right?
So I only use, what Tesla says. So Elon says it's 20 million by the end of the decade. I
Yeah.
take it that he believes that. And I always take it that he didn't just pull it out of the air. He sat
Mm-hmm.
down, he did some calculations. Yes, He said he's going to grow it 50% per year, blah, 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 blah. And we know that if you take the 500,000 from 2020 and you grow that at 50% per year on average, that you get to the 20 million in 2029. You don't even have to go to 2030. And in 2030, it would be 30 million. So if you say, okay, these things get harder as you get bigger. So there's
Mhm.
no, so right now, I'm even saying this year that for the very first time, as a guy who's been in marketing and sales my entire life, I started selling stuff when I was 5 years old, door to door. Um, I look at they need to sell roughly 90,000 more cars next quarter than they did this quarter, because between Shanghai not having any downtime and the two new factories producing 30,000 each more cars than they did last quarter, that's 60 and 20, call it 80, but it might be as much as 100,000 more cars in the next 90 days than they did in the previous 90 days. And I'm going, that seems like a big get. The good news is they're all Model Ys, basically, that they have to sell. And the Model Y is selling like crazy. So I don't think they'll have any trouble selling the 90,000. And then the next quarter, the next 90,000. And then the next quarter, it won't be quite as many, I don't think, additional, but then they'll have the Cybertrucks coming in. So I'm still putting the number for this year at 2.2 to 2.3, not 1.8 to 2.0. They would have to, and I'm going to, Herbert, you can have me on again if you want to talk about this. They would literally have to take shifts off. They would have to stop production for the weeks. They would have to say, we don't want to make 2.2 million in order to get down to 2 million. Because there's no way, if you just make the shifts as they are now to the end of the year and you continue to ramp as they have ramped in the past, you get to 2.2. If you ramp as you have in the past and you do a little better, you get to 2.3. And if you really put the pedal to the metal, more. But I'm going with
Yeah.
2.2.
Okay. Well, 2.2 is a big move as well. People I've told that to would say, well, we hit 420 this year,
Right.
this quarter,
What quarter?
quarter one.
Right.
So you're already behind because you need 500,000 times four, right? But you're not. You need to now make more than 500,000 for the next three quarters to be able to catch up to that. So 520, 550.
Yep.
To be able to get to your 2.2 at some point. So that's, you're already behind in Q1, which is understandable because Q1 is usually the slowest slowest quarter.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. So
That's okay. I'm not here to debate what's going to happen this year, whether
right.
it's
So
2
now,
million, 1.8 or 2.2. What matters is the next 5 years, where do you see the auto market going? Yeah.
right. So you've got that situation. So now I said all of that to really point out that this year, I think they'll sell almost a million more than they did last year. And I think
Mm-hmm.
they'll sell a little bit more than a million more than that the following year. But then
Mm-hmm.
it gets trickier. Okay.
Yeah.
So now you're at 3.1 or 2, 3.3, something like that. And now, in order to grow at 50%, you're talking about 1.6 million. Now
Mm-hmm.
you're at 5 million, and now you got to do 2.5 million the following year. And then you're at 7.5. Now you got to do over 3 million
Mm-hmm.
additional units in production as well as sales. So
Mm-hmm.
the bigger it gets, the harder it gets, generally speaking. That's how I think everybody would agree that that would be true. So, what are you going to do in terms of creating compelling vehicles at compelling prices? Elon Musk quote, if you don't have a compelling product at a compelling price, don't go into business. Or if you don't and you're already in business, leave the business. You need a compelling product at a compelling price. So, once again, thinking years out, Elon has compelling products planned for years out. And once again, it's all about that branch in the road. Okay. So for the next 2 years, 3 years, not a problem. The Cybertruck, the Model Y ramp, continuing Model Y ramp, whatever the Model 3 variation that's going to come out that he believes, I think, will increase the sales of Model 3. Um, that's plenty. They got plenty of production capacity in place, and they got plenty of customer sales, I believe, to get them to keep their 50% rate going. In fact, more than their 50% rate. Then it's going to be up to the model, whatever it's called, the Tau or the 2 or the whatever, the Generation 3 platform. It's
Mhm.
going to be up to that vehicle. And here again, we're confronted with the split in the road. Okay. So I believe that the initial reveal will be both. They will reveal a version of some kind of a hatchback or something, something that looks like a. Somebody said, over the last couple of days, the rumor is a smaller Model Y, something of that order that will be something for consumers to drive with or without a steering wheel, doesn't matter. But that'll be a consumer car. Simultaneously, there will be that car or something slightly scaled down in terms of creature comforts or whatever, or designed a little different in terms of the internal way that it's laid out, that will be designed as a 100% Robotaxi.
Mhm.
Will both of those hit the streets on the same day? I don't know, but they'll be revealed at the same time. And then the question is, which do they make lots of? Well, to get to 4 million, I think it could be 100% just the consumer car.
Mhm.
So I don't really see a problem getting to 4 million. It won't be all one car. Well, it might be. So I've had this debate in my brain for the last couple of days. He's always said that there would be a Chinese version, a European version, and a domestic version. That you need the three different versions because that small car should be unique to its geography. And I believe that those three unique versions have been on the drawing board now for a couple of years.
Mhm.
But it also occurred to me the other day, well, what if maybe they've got such a hot looking car that they all three geographies have said that'll work here. So it's possible that it'll just be one. But I'm still going with my theory that it'll be three completely unique vehicles, and that a
Mhm.
bunch of them will be made in Mexico. Million of them will be made in Shanghai, 500,000 in Europe, and they won't have any trouble selling those 4 million because they're going to cost under 30,000. They're going to have all of the benefits that you already have in a Model 3. It'll just be smaller, and
Mhm.
maybe not as luxurious as a Model 3, just in order to make it, not as luxurious. You just have to have it. It's like a model. What is called the Mercedes Model E when that first
Mhm.
came out. They had to dumb it down because otherwise, who's going to buy the other one? It's going to cannibalize, all of the better cars. So that's what I see is, and I just, it's hard for me to imagine them having any trouble at all selling those. I
Yeah, I do not have any doubts myself that they will sell 20 million cars by 2030. We've heard the arguments by some very good bulls who are investment analysts, and they're just saying, look, if you look at the ICE cars today, the existing OEMs, Toyota can only sell 10, $12 million a year. Look at all the segments that they're in. We do not see Tesla being able to get to 20 million because now you're talking they have to go from 20% of the market of all cars to 40%, and that they'll never be able to do that. In my mind, it's like, yes, if they wanted to and they need to create different segments, they can do that. As we know, they're incredible manufacturing. They've got factories being built pretty quick. In a year they can spit something out, and they've figured out the unboxing model. They can replicate that over and over again at this point, and these existing factories are expanding. But more importantly, these factories are able to cut price, and their focus is on operating margin, and they continue to increase their margins as they continue to get incredibly better at this. So now what happens when, let's say you don't create a new segment? Let's say you have your smaller Model Y, then you have your Model 3 and you don't create a compact car. But what if you sold that Model 3 for $10,000 cheaper?
Right.
The market just explodes at that point. Now people will say, well, of course you need the compact car because it's, there's different use cases and so forth. So yes, I'm not saying that they don't need to create a segment, but if you've got that pricing power, if you just focus on cost, there's no reason why you can't own 50% of the market or even more. I don't
I'm
know.
not. I'm not
It's like
even.
price.
By the way, I'm not worried about that at all. In fact, I
Yeah,
think that they won't have 50% of the market. I think if the market is still 80 million,
exactly. Yeah.
If it's 80
Yeah.
million,
Yeah.
and they get 25% of it, that's
Yeah.
20 million.
That's good
And I
enough. It's massive.
and that's enough, 20 million. And
Agreed.
the reality is that that's all they're planning to make.
Mhm.
But by
Yeah.
2027, I was just listening to somebody this morning who was agreeing with me on the 2027. I've been saying for, I don't know, 6 months or longer, 2027 is the end of ICE cars. It's
Yeah.
over.
It could be sooner than we all think. Yeah.
Oh yeah,
I agreed with you there.
2027, 2028, nobody's going to want an ICE car. There'll be some niche
Yeah.
players that might be interested in a niche product, but basically ICE is gone in 2028. So by 2027, you're going to need 80 million cars being built by somebody to fill that market. And there's
Yeah.
no way, not a chance in
The
the
others will
world
catch up.
that
Yeah.
everybody else is going to make 60 million or
Yeah.
70 million if Tesla's only making 10 million by 2027. So
Yeah.
it's basically going to be a demand problem on the other way. Everybody's going to be waiting for their electric car
Yeah. I've
because
been showing this graph that somebody made that showed that if you add all the forecasts of all the OEM cars, all the car manufacturers, and you add their forecast for 2030 and you see them there, it actually frequently adds up to exactly 80 million, which is the current number of cars that are being sold a year
yes,
globally, right?
yes, yes,
And that's with Tesla at 20 million. That's with BYD. That's with all the Chinese manufacturers and even everybody. And so the question is not, can Teslas make 20 million? The question is, can any of all the other OEMs, can they make what they forecast to be 2030? And the likelihood is more likely that they can't do it. And if they can't do it, it's like wide open,
yes. No, it's wide open,
the market.
but it's also wide
Okay.
open. It's also, Herbert, it's also wide open if it happens before 2030. So
Yeah.
if the ice age
Yeah.
is over in 2028,
Yeah.
then the demand is off the charts
Whoever can move it.
compared to
Okay,
compared
we
to
got to keep moving here because
right,
we've got a lot to
right,
talk about. Let's talk
right.
energy storage, which is shocking to me that you got a number 4. Energy is going to be bigger. Are you thinking just energy by 2030? I thought we all said that mega packs are much easier to create, that they've already got the Lathrop factory in place. It's easy for them to just create massive factories. The margins are so much bigger than auto business. They could make more money on energy. In fact, Elon has said that energy is infinite. His words in terms of the total addressable market for this. So why do you have it as number 4? I can see it being below bots, but I don't see it as below Robotaxi or cars.
Well, again, I hate to sound like a broken record. I use what comes out of Elon's mouth, and Elon
Yeah,
said,
I did too. Go
he
ahead.
says, we're going to do 1 trillion. I'm sorry,
Oh,
1 terawatt hour of energy storage. So if you're only
right.
going to do 1 terawatt of any energy storage, and right now you're selling that for 500 a kilowatt hour, $500 a kilowatt hour, then the maximum that you're going to have in energy storage in 2030 is going to be
Mm.
$500 billion. And so the maximum profit, let's say even at 35%, is going to be, call that a third of that. Okay, 166 billion. Well, 166 billion is less than I'm expecting in those 3 other categories in terms of bottom line. That's why energy storage fits where it does. I also think good news, bad news, however you want to look at it, is that energy storage dollars will come down. You're already seeing lithium fall off a cliff.
Yeah.
You're already seeing CATL in negotiations with every car company and with Tesla to drop the cost of the batteries. We already see Tesla making their own batteries, which is going to reduce the cost of batteries. So I'm thinking it's really going to be more like $300 or somewhere in between per kilowatt hour by then, which means you're only really looking at 300 billion. And if it's 33% bottom line profit, then you're only looking at $100 billion in profits, of course, which only about 3 companies ever in the history of the world have reached $100
Right.
billion in profits.
Yeah.
They
But
would
for
be,
us, it's only. Yeah.
it's only, yes. Well, you got Aramco and you've got
Yeah.
Apple, and I don't know. I'm not sure if anybody else has, but so 100 billion would be a great number, but it does mean it's further down the line in terms of the pillars. But yes, I see that as being the simplest and the easiest, the the most obvious ramp of all of them is that one. And the TAM, he calls it unlimited. I had somebody today say, "Well, gee whiz, there's only this many peaker plants," and somebody else said, "Well, there's enough peaker plants to keep them going like crazy, replacing peaker plants to keep them in business for years into the future." And I thought, the peaker plant business is great, but the business that's out there is in supplying the batteries for all the solar and wind farms that are going up, because they can't put those solar and wind farms up until they got the batteries. And then you've got all the batteries that you need for the superchargers and the mega chargers. And then you got the batteries that'll go into factories. And I mean, it just goes on and on. There are so many markets for the batteries.
Mhm,
That's,
mhm.
that's so
Okay,
easy. That was an easy.
understood. Yeah, that makes sense now. So we're talking about 2030, but future, it's gonna the largest company in the world by far is Saudi Aramco. And it's crazy how much profit that they make. I think I just saw that, you add up all their profits, it's more than the six biggest companies ever, including
Right.
Google and Microsoft. You add them all up this
I'm
year.
not I'm not saying that the curve flattens in 2030, but the curve will flatten at some point. So
Yeah.
you're not going to need this much storage going into the future. So the storage number will eventually flatten and go down, because these storage units are going to last for 100 years. I mean, they're not
Hmm.
there's nothing to go wrong with them. The batteries are designed to last for a very, very long time, and if they don't, then you recycle them and put them back in. So I mean, there's going to be a leveling off at some point on the storage.
Okay, but let's just explain a bit on Tesla Energy. Just
Mhm.
give us a little rundown of where they're sold. I think you kind of mentioned a little bit, but just for a lot of people who don't know what's going on, the customers that they have, the margins that they're making. Where's Tesla? We know that they had a version one of their mega packs that they're selling for $2 million. And there's a 2 year wait list at this point. They've sold this to multiple countries and utilities, but this is not just going to be utilities, it's going to be corporations as well. Tell me about the business a little bit. Spend about 2 minutes on this, and then we'll move on to the final
Okay.
topic.
So the number one place, as I mentioned a second ago, the number one place they got to go immediately is into solar and wind farms. Any place where the wind doesn't blow, all the time, and the sun doesn't shine all the time. We've heard that said a million times. So you have to have something to be able to balance these things, and also to work with the grid to create the arbitrage between the grid and the users. So you need those, and you need them in huge numbers, because the world is deploying solar and wind at an amazing rate, and it's just going to grow even more over the next several years. So that's a big use. Will there be other people that want to be in that business, that are in that business, CATL and others, who are making full on units? Yes, there are, but basically just that business alone is so huge that it would take a lot of expansion by Tesla to even fill that market. Then, as somebody pointed out, peaker plants all over the world. I think it's 1,000 peaker plants just in the United States that need to be
Hmm.
replaced, and many more around the world. Then you have expanding markets. So all of these second and third world nations are expanding the use of electricity at a very rapid clip, and so they need lots and lots of megapacks. If I owned my factory today, I would be putting solar on the top and putting a mega pack in the facility, no question about it. Save you so much money. And my number after rent, my number two bill was electricity, $14,000 a month, and was my electric bill. So then you go from there. You go to your superchargers. Every supercharger location, whether it's owned by Tesla or not owned by Tesla, is going to need solar, and it's going to need a mega pack, or mega packs, depending on how many units they've got. And then every mega charger that goes to fill the semi trucks is also going to need a mega pack and a bunch of solar in order to do that. So that's another massive business. Then you've got government buildings and unique utility situations. Like, for instance, I believe in the concept, and I know Elon has talked about this, of where you have dispersed energy. So I've got solar on my home roof. I've got a pack in my garage, a wall unit in my garage, or two. That's going to cover me almost all the time. but there's going to be this unique situation where it doesn't. And so you need a mega pack for the region, for the subdivision, or for 1,000 homes or whatever. And that mega pack picks up if there's a crazy situation where you need to go to that mega pack, and then it's the thing that's connected to the grid, and eventually the grid might have to come in and power the mega pack. So that would be another place where millions of mega packs would go.
Yeah. Okay. Those mega packs are pretty expensive at this point. High margins. Tesla's already got a Lathrop factory. They've just announced massive expansion in Giga Nevada. And then there's also expansion in China. It's going to have mega pack factory building. So they're going at it. They're
Well, those are all rumors. Those are all rumors, just so we
not
get
the
it.
Nevada one.
Well,
Not the
Nevada's just
Nevada one.
batteries. They haven't said anything about
Yeah.
Nevada making mega packs yet.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
Right.
I assumed that was
Yeah.
mega
Nope.
packs.
So far, we don't have the second location for sure. It is rumored that Shanghai will have a mega pack factory. Yes.
Okay, good.
Strong
Now, one
rumor.
of the things you said, let's talk about Tesla semis and a couple of points here. One is semi is your fifth largest business of the 11 businesses that you've got talking about Tesla. More than superchargers, more than insurance, software as a service, more than solar or Dojo as a service, and HVAC. But shocked because semi trucks are typically not, it's not going to be a big business from my calculation. Although you have said that you don't see that semi is just a sale of the vehicle, that includes the service, multiple year service, but also includes solar panels and the mega packs as part of that package. But why do you have this as number 5?
And by the way, I was so embarrassed yesterday. One of my YouTube watchers made a comment, and he says, "Randy, you left out FSD."
Oh yeah. That's right. That's right.
So, so
Of
what
course.
is going to need FSD more than a semi truck? Once it's ready
Yes.
for semi trucks, it changes everything about
Yeah.
everything. It
Yeah.
reduces the cost of your carrots at the grocery store by a lot
Yeah.
just by
Hmm.
having the truck hauling those carrots for with no labor cost. Anyway,
Hmm.
all right, Tesla semi. So here's the big. So nobody pays any attention to this. They pay even less
Yeah.
attention to semi than they do to energy, but it's a massive business. So there are 4 million semi trucks and quote unquote large trucks sold each year in the world. So some people refer to these as class 8 trucks, class 6. There's a smaller class 6. I don't know a lot of the technical details of what they're called. All I can tell you is that the total market each year is 4 million units. All
Hmm.
right. The United States is only 250,000, but you got massive countries out there: India, Indonesia, China, South America. If you got all these places that are going to need, that have lots and lots and lots of this size truck. So it's 4 million a year. That's something that's easy enough to look up on Google. So I'm just saying 25% market share. Now, that's not something Elon has ever said. He's never said, I'm going to make 1 million trucks. He's never said, I'm going to make more than 50,000 in 2024. That's the only quote that I can find on Elon with regard to the future of semi trucks. So 50,000 are going to be made in 2024, and that's all we know. That's his goal, at least, is for 2024. However, he has also said it is the number one way to reduce air pollution. It is the number one way to reduce particulates in the air. It is the number one way to reduce the amount of petroleum that's being used, and therefore the number one way to drive us towards a sustainable future. Let's see. Mission statement.
Hmm. Hmm.
So, taking that and connecting the dots, I don't know why. I can't think of a reason why, once they create the line in Nevada and they start knocking out these semi trucks and get them on the road and have addressed all the issues, that they won't just open, either increase that line and make more in Reno, or start building other semi trucks around the world, semi truck factories around the world. And 1 million would be 25% market share. That's all. That's how I got there. It's not,
Hmm.
no fancy science, just listening to Elon, making good extrapolations of the information that I have at hand, and then knowing that right now an electric semi truck in Europe will cost you 500 to $600,000. So I had a semi truck expert on my show, and he said 500 to 600,000 for something that isn't as good as the Tesla Semi. So I'm just based on that, I'm saying $300,000 without
Mhm.
FSD. Now that I'm going to
Yeah.
start adding that into all my conversations.
Mhm.
So 300,000 for the hardware. And then you have a problem of double booking. So yes, there's going to be a lot of solar sold, and there's going to be mega chargers sold, and there's going to be mega packs sold along with the semi trucks. But you can't count them in both. So if
Mhm.
you're going to count the solar for solar and you're going to count the mega packs for mega pack, you can't also
Mhm.
count them for the trucks. So for the purposes of the truck division, I'm saying it is a million times 300,000 add in FSD. So you got 300 billion in sales. I'm saying that they will be so far ahead of the competition still by the end of the decade because none of these other companies are even, they haven't even
Yep.
started. I mean, they've got a few trucks out there, but they're not. It's kind of where legacy auto was 3 or 4 years
Yeah.
ago. So they got no chance. So basically, I'm saying they're all by themselves. So they're going to get 33% margins. So multiply $100,000 times 300 times a million trucks, and you get my $100 billion a year in profit. So that,
Okay.
and then
Yeah.
add FSD.
So we just covered 5 business segments that Tesla has in detail about how big of a market they could be potentially by 2030. So we're 2022 right now, 23 right now. And then yet there's a bunch of other businesses that Tesla has. So you've got superchargers, you've got insurance, you got the software that they have, whether you consider it not FSD, but selling that software as a service to other businesses and even to consumers. Right? You can buy monthly for internet access. You can buy monthly for entertainment within the cars. They can continue to expand that. You got solar, and you got Dojo, which is Tesla's supercomputer. Eventually, just like Amazon's AWS, they could start selling this to businesses. Dojo software as a service,
Right.
a dojo as a service, as they might call it. So you've got all of these, and the potential hint that Tesla might actually get into HVAC, heating, ventilation, and air conditioning. They haven't said anything about it. They just said, "I wish one day." But these are potential businesses, and the first 5 I just mentioned here, they're all existing today, except for HVAC, right? And then Dojo is existing, but they haven't sold that to anybody externally. But
They haven't even
tell
said
me
they're
about
going.
these. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
okay. So tell me
Yeah.
about these remaining
So
6.
yeah. So basically, you could take, let's say, you sit there. The first thought in your mind with the supercharger network is, oh my gosh, it's like if Chevrolet owned mobile, you know, or Shell
Or
or
Chevron. Yeah,
Chevron.
Shell.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So it's like, oh my gosh, it should be this massive, massive thing. So then I did the numbers. I said, okay, they're supposed to have 100,000 total stalls by the end of 2024. Let's just kind of quickly in our head think that might be a million stalls by the end of the decade. Probably will be. I think
Mhm.
that's a
Mhm.
fair assumption. They'll be up to a million stalls by the end of the decade. And let's say that those stalls are profiting um, $10,000 each per year, profiting each stall. That'd be pretty
Mhm.
good. I don't think it's going
Mhm.
to happen, but let's say 10,000. Well, now you've got a $10 billion business.
Mhm.
It's not a $100 billion business and $10 billion
Mhm.
profit. It's not $100 billion. And I think that's all stretching. I think that's all being very optimistic. It's a huge business. If you put it on the market today as a stock, I think it would go through the roof. I mean, be worth, maybe it's worth 10, maybe 20, maybe $100 billion now. Because of that ramp that anybody can see. It doesn't take too much brain power to see that they're installing these things at a certain rate. And then you multiply that out. Even, I'm sorry, Gary Black, I love you. I think you're amazing. But even Gary Black would be able to be able to model that this is going to happen, that a million of these by the end of the decade is probably smart. So, yeah, but it turns out to be a rounding error on on Tesla. So
Yeah.
that's the biggest. That's the biggest of them. So
Yeah.
insurance, huge potential, massive potential. Might also be 10 billion, might be less. But the problem with insurance is going to go away. I
Yeah.
mean, as you get these robo taxis out there and nobody's driving, and the car is driving itself, they're not going to have any accidents, so you're not going to
Yeah.
need insurance. And so at
Yeah.
some point, insurance goes like this, and it drops off a cliff. And
Mhm.
and theoretically, the revenues will start dropping every year as Tesla puts more and more cars on the road because they're
Mhm.
so much safer. So I see the insurance business as killing itself over time.
Yeah, but this is another Tesla advantage, right? Because if you think
Yes,
of purchasing a car, there is a price for the car. Let's say
right.
30,000, let's say 50,000, whatever it is. Then you're going to lease it, or you're going to loan it and pay a monthly fee for that to pay it off over 5 years. But
Mhm.
then you have to pay for insurance. And if Tesla is able to do either robotaxi or even just take the liability for the insurance
Mhm.
and slowly remove the price of insurance, why would you buy any other car if you can get, you don't have to pay the $1,000 to $2,000 a year that you normally pay in insurance? So
Yeah, and
it's yeah.
make sure you tell your kids, do not intend to become a personal injury attorney. It's just
It's not going to exist. Yeah.
he says that.
Gotcha. Okay. Anything else? So tell me about yeah, I mean Dojo as a service obviously is what is it? The fifth largest supercomputer today using the Nvidia cluster, but once Dojo comes on board, it's even going to be faster than that, and
It'll be
it's already moving forward.
the fastest, by far the largest learning computer in the world. It's being designed to where you just take your own computer, plug it in. It'd be like, I say plug it in, I don't mean literally, but it'll be almost like open an app and you'll be able to get your access to this massive computer learning capacity. So, yeah, there's a massive market. Elon, again, I just listened to what Elon says. He says, we
Yeah.
will let you know around the third quarter. That's what he said,
Mhm.
third quarter of this year,
Mhm.
whether we're going to offer Dojo as a service. It depends on whether it is better than NVIDIA and whether it's
Mhm.
enough better that we want to be bothered with it. Because at the end of the day, it would have to be incredibly good in order to make it a very big business. And it would take a lot of brain power and team setting up teams and all the rest to make it work. So yes, it could be a massive business, but AWS is not $100 billion a year profit, believe me.
Mhm. Yeah, that's good.
So would it be 100 billion? I doubt it.
Okay. So, yeah, we're not going to have time to go through the other ones, but
Okay.
you went through in detail with the five. Then we mentioned a couple of the next six. So that's 11 businesses they're in. Based on this, just wrapping it up, going to the beginning where you are projecting $10,000, Tesla stock at $10,000 by 2030. Tell me how this adds up and how strongly do you believe that this is going to happen?
Okay, so I'm trying to remember, and I always mess up when I try to do these numbers in my head, but I think we're talking about $2 trillion in revenue at 30%, 30%, which would be $600 billion in profit, divided by $3 billion is $100 per profit per share, times 20 would be $2,000, times 50 would be $5,000. Anyway, I think there was something in there that I did incorrectly, but that's how I got to it. So you just take, if you think it's $2 trillion in sales, maybe I was off by, I think I must have thought it was 4 billion in sales with 1.5 billion in profit. So that's where I can't just add it all back in my head if I have my numbers in front of me. But roughly speaking, that's how you add up the five divisions I just gave you. Maybe it was a trillion in profit. Anyway, I'm sorry, but that's how you get there, and that's how. And it's again. Can I just say this really out loud again?
Mhm.
None of us know. This is like Randy Kirk just brainstorming off the statements of Elon. Elon doesn't know either. So many things could happen between now and there. Nothing like the disruptor getting disrupted. That can happen. You could have
Mhm.
World War III. You could have Chat GPT take over the world and kill us all. According
Yeah.
to some of the smartest guys on the planet right now, ChatGPT is going to kill us all. So we don't know
Yeah.
what's going to happen between now and then. So my numbers are not any better than the numbers you can produce, except that I've spent a few minutes listening to Elon, listening to the experts, and then trying to do some multiplications on a spreadsheet. And so I come to $5,000 a share minimum, $10 million a share. I mean, $10,000 a share as maybe my base case in 2030.
Mhm. Yeah, that's a good point about not knowing what the world's going to be like with GPT coming in and AI improving so quickly. What's going to happen to humans and our jobs and so forth? I had an interview with Dave Lee, and he walked through the big segments that Tesla is going to go through. So the first one we're in right now is auto, and then right after that it's going to be Robotaxi, and then
Mhm.
there will be energy, and then we'll get to bots, and then general AI.
Mhm.
And if you think about Chat GPT or GPT specifically, and
Mhm.
GPT-4 now becomes 5, 7,
Mhm.
10, and
Mhm.
how incredibly improved, what got me concerned is the bots. Okay, because let's talk about it right now, right?
Yeah, sure.
So the auto business is not something that GPT-4 is going to be able to impact. Tesla's won the auto business. They're going to continue winning it for the 5, 10 years. They're going to, you need manufacturing for this. It's not something that they can replicate and catch up at all. Uh, Same with Robotaxi, surprisingly,
Mhm.
because Robotaxi is very specialized to cars and the vision of cars and the driving of the cars. And is there a possibility that Chat GPT could actually replicate that? I think there might be. There might be where they just ingest YouTube videos and then it teaches it. But there's most people are saying that, in fact, we actually heard the CIO of OpenAI say that they decided not to do uh, robotaxi or robots because you need this very specialized, like we said, heard him say 100,000 of these units to be able to teach it
Right.
the neural network to understand. So then there's energy. Again, you require manufacturing. You need to have the lithium, the energy, minerals, and so forth. So Tesla is going to win all of these massive businesses. The one part I'm concerned about is Optimus, the Tesla bot,
Mhm.
because it's actually fairly trivial, as we said at the beginning, to create the bots, and they don't have to be great. You can have anybody create just really pathetic looking, pathetic moving bots. What matters is the brain. And is GPT more of a conscious brain that is 1,000 times smarter than a human? That's going to be much better than what Tesla might be able to do because they're behind. They have optimized for vision and driving. They have not optimized for general AI. There's a debate, right? Because what Tesla can do is he calls it general AI, real world AI. It can understand the world by looking at things. It knows what things are. It can label it, but so can GPT. So the question there is, who's going to win the bot in the future? Any
So
thoughts on that?
Elon has also said that the number one thing that differentiates Tesla from every other company in the world is their manufacturing prowess,
Mm-hmm.
their agile approach to manufacturing, their approach to manufacturing that says we're going to build the product and design it to be manufactured from day one. Now, does that mean nobody else can do that? Sure, somebody else can all of a sudden become agile. Somebody else can start hiring and start building a factory that they've never built a factory to build robots before. They've never built a factory to build cars before. They've never used agile as a agile plus, as Joe Justice calls what Elon does. Agile plus, it's beyond agile. So they don't even know how to design the culture. They could take classes and stuff, but they're years and years and years behind Tesla in terms of that agile approach to manufacturing. They're years and years behind in the massive iterations on a daily basis on everything that they do. So the manufacturing prowess is the thing that will keep Tesla ahead on the robots way into the future, even if their software learning side is replicable by other companies. And then, as I mentioned with cars, and also I think mentioned with robots, the size of the total addressable market means it's kind of doesn't matter. It
Yeah,
will be
it's getting
anybody that
successful.
can make a
Yep.
useful robot is going to sell useful robots. for a long, long time. Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for this conversation. Very, very cool. It's the first time I think I've had this call where, a meeting where we actually covered every business. I mean, the big ones, right? 5 big
Yes.
ones, 6
Yes.
smaller ones. And in fact, there's actually a table that I've created that shows that there's actually 28 different business units that they're actually in. But what matters is what you just said, right? It's about the innovation, the space of innovation that Tesla is doing, and their focus on manufacturing. If they can do manufacturing, and they have the innovative culture, they can create any business. And there's no reason why Tesla's not going to enter a brand new business 2 years from now and yet a new one 4 years from now and so forth. They're going to continue to just expand. So this was a great eye-opening conversation. Thank you so much, Randy. So folks, if you haven't seen yet, visit Randy at his Twitter at RandyWKirk1. He's got his YouTube channel as well, and he's written 2 books on Elon Musk. So called Elon Musk Mission and Elon Musk Method. And he's writing a 3rd book. So check him out. Thank you so much, Randy. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it. Please follow me on YouTube and give us a like and ask us a question. Thanks, everybody. See you later. Bye-bye.